Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Mid Suffolk District Council Planning Committee. I am Councillor Sarah Mansell and I will be chairing the committee this morning. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. If you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off and that your laptops are also switched to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of this meeting will be recorded except where there are confidential or exempt items. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you intend to do so, please could you inform the committee clerk. If you hear the fire alarm, leave the building immediately via a fire exit and make your way to the assembly point at Ipswich Town Football Ground. Follow the signs directing you to fire exits. Do not re-enter the building until you're told it is safe to do so. So we have some introductions. At the front on my left, we have the Area Planning Manager, Gemma Walker, and planning officers will be sitting doing the cases. We have one planning officer who will be joining us via video call. And we have another planning officer at the back who will move forward when his case is on. We have governance officers, Alicia Norman, Mandy Smith and Beth Webb, who will be making sure that the meeting runs to order. And we have the members of the committee sitting on my right, and we have Ian Dupre, our legal advisor. So can I move to the agenda, please? Apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Haddingham with Councillor Linda substituting. We also have Councillor Patchett here today, but he's not here for the whole committee. He will be joining us later, but for clarity, he won't be able to participate and vote on items in which he has not heard the whole representation. Thank you, Chair.
So welcome, Councillor Linda, to your first planning committee as a member of the committee. Item number 2, to receive declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest or other registrable or non-registrable interests by members. Are there any to declare? No? Thank you. Item number 3, declarations of lobbying. Are there any to declare? Well, I think we all received an email from somebody from Haughley Parish Council. I mean, I don't think it was particularly lobbying, but it was an email. I think we all got that, did we? Yeah. Item number 4, declarations of personal site visits. Any to declare? No, thank you. Item number 5, MPL 2405, confirmation of the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting held on the 17th of July. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? No? So could I have a proposer? Thank you, Councillor Warboys. And a seconder? Councillor Linda. So the governance officer will now conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now open on ModGov. Thank you, Chair. That makes 7 votes for, so that's carried.
Oh, I didn't have my mic on, did I?
No worries.
Sorry.
No petitions received, Chair.
Item number 7. So we now move to the schedule of planning applications. We are having a change of order to the schedule of planning applications this morning. First, we will consider item 7C, DC 2400619 at Gateway 14. Then we'll be doing item 7B, DC 2402251 at the First Coombs Scout Group. And then item 7A, DC 2305721 in Haughley. We will begin with the application at Gateway 14, DC 2400619, and we are expecting the case officer to be on Teams. So can I hand over to Avril Gowdy to introduce the application to the committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Can I just check you can all hear me and see my presentation?
That's perfect, Avril. Thank you.
Okay. And can you see my cursor as well, just in case I start pointing things out?
You just move the cursor so we can see it's if it's moving.
Yeah, I am moving it. So is that...
Could you put the,
No, I can't. We
the
can't.
red laser pointer on it, please, Avril?
Oh, I can see it now, but it's quite small. Make it bigger.
See that?
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Yep, so the application before us today is DC 24/00619, and it's for an application for advertisement consent for the erection of totem poles and display of illuminated and non-illuminated hoardings and fascia signage at plot 4000, the Range building at Gateway 14. So the proposed signage totals 153 signs, but you'll see quite a few of them are very small. And the signage is intended to facilitate the branding and identification of the occupier, and also the identification of the different areas of the site, and to facilitate the safe movement around the site. And I know you've seen this slide several times, but I thought it was just useful for context of the Range building. You can see there to the right of your screen. And again, I'm sure by now we know where it is, but just for some context, you've got Cedars Park to the north, the A1120 running to the northwest, the A14, Creeting St Peter, Camp Farm Barns, and Tesco's. And again, site location plans, you can see it there within the sort of the furthest plot to the northwest of the Gateway 14 development. And then in terms of constraints, albeit they're not particularly relevant, but you can see that it's outside of the settlement boundary. There are some grade 2 listed buildings in the vicinity, and sort of the southern end of the site is in flood zone 2 and 3. And just the elevations, but I have got some closer versions of these. I'll just wiggle my mouse around a bit. So you can see we've got some signage on this corner here, which is also the same as this corner here. And then we've got some signage above the entrance. And as you'll see on some of the later slides, we've got some vinyl numbers above sort of the dock levelers and loading bays. And so this is the corner signage that I pointed out, which has got the Range and the Wilco logos on it. This is the only part of the application where the signage is illuminated. So the signage would be internally illuminated, and that would just be for the text and the logos only. And then you've got the signage above the entrance. So this one wouldn't be illuminated. And you can just see sort of in the bottom of each slide, I've just done a broad sort of identifying the location. So I'll just flick back because I didn't point that out. But so yeah, we're on the northern corner here, and then this one's above the entrance, which is more to the south. And then again, you've got some small signage, sort of, you can see on the two sort of protruding parts of the building. You've kind of got a goods in, goods out signage, and sort of above the entrance doors. Likewise, there's a sort of identification sign on the recycling unit, which you can see is sort of adjacent, closest to the railway line to the south of the site, and that would be on the northeast elevation, so facing into the site. Likewise, some signage on the gatehouse for HGV drivers when they enter the site. So you've got the Range and the Wilco identification sign, and then sort of a one-way only round the building sign. And there's some totem poles, so 5 in total with different directional markers on. These, so T1 and T2, which are the two at the top, they would have a height of 1,975 millimeters, and the ones at the bottom would be smaller at 1,250 millimeters. And just in terms of locations, these are sort of dotted at the entrance, the two vehicular entrances to the site, one close to the bus stop, one adjacent to the car park, and then one sort of the access road for HGVs. And then looking at the loading bay numbers, so just to note, this is the only part of the application which is retrospective, as the building was occupied by the range in June 2024. These signage had to be installed already for safety purposes. So you can see they're quite discrete numbers on the top of the loading bays, and sort of this is sort of the examples. And I've got some photos of these already now that they're in situ, but essentially they're along the two lengths of the building. And then just moving on to some photos. So this is the northern corner where the illuminated signage would go. So just for context, sort of this sort of dark corner is where the signage would sit above there. And then sort of taken in the same place but looking a bit further along the northeast elevation, so you can just about make out here the number signage above the loading bays, and slightly closer in here. And again, taken from the HGV entrance, looking into the site, so you can see the vinyl numbers there. And here you've got the goods in sign here. And again, you can just about in the distance make out the gatehouse. And again, you can see the vinyl numbers there. And again, just... And then this is the entrance. So the one that I said that would sit above the entrance would essentially sit in this area here. And you can also see there's some signage here associated with accessible parking. And again, just sort of from the car park, because there would be some of the totem poles are sort of in this area along here for directions. And then again, just the HGV entrance. So there would also be a totem pole in this area. And yeah, the recommendation is to grant advertisement consent with the standard conditions, with an additional condition for maximum illumination as recommended by our environmental health team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from members to the case officer? Councillor Penny.
Yeah, just in relation to the illumination, are they backlit, these signs, or are they uplit or downlit?
So they're internally illuminated, so So here we've got detail here, 6,500K LED modules internally illuminated. So I don't think it's the case that the lighting faces a certain direction, it's just sort of shines from within the sign.
Backlit, presumably then, with the...
Is your mic on? Avril won't hear you.
So I can assume backlit then, with the LEDs behind the signs?
That's my understanding, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Are there any further questions of the officer? Councillor Warboys. Somebody's computer is pinging. Can you put it to silent?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I think it's my number.
All right, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Warboys.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just this signage is quite clear and contemporary and fairly restrained. Is it going to be consistent across the whole of Gateway 14? Is this the sort of style of signage we could expect for the whole site, or is it going to be individual to each applicant?
Obviously, it's difficult to say, as this is the first one that has come forward, and obviously we haven't had any of the other plots that we've had the reserve matters applications for. They haven't obviously started building. But obviously there is going to be a consistency point going forward, that we are going to want to ensure that there is sort of a consistent design theme across. I think from sort of users of the highway, the main one that you're going to see is probably this corner one, sort of as you come off the sort of Tesco's roundabout. I think it is going to be fairly difficult because, yeah, they suit the occupier in terms of that's sort of their standards, their logo, but I guess there's a possibility that other occupiers may want to do something slightly different. And we are somewhat limited by what considerations we can have regard to, given that this is an advertisement consent application. But yeah, we will be looking at sort of a consistent approach as other plots come forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions of the officer? If not, then I will now invite any public speakers, but we don't have anyone from the Town Council. We don't have an objector or a supporter or an agent. I do have a written statement from Councillor Lay, who is one of the ward members, so I will read that out. So this is come by email from Councillor Lay on this application, and his comments are: as a ward councillor, it is my responsibility to represent the interests of the residents in Stowthorney. I would like to provide the following observations regarding the recently installed signage at the range site. I would ask the committee to take note that I also serve as a director on the Gateway 14 board, and this statement is delivered entirely from the perspective of a ward councillor. Firstly, I am pleased to report that no objections have been received from any residents in Stowthorney regarding the newly installed signage. This suggests that the community is satisfied with its presence and does not see it as excessive or inappropriate. Furthermore, I believe that the installation of signage at the range site was always a foreseeable part of its development plan. As such, it should not come as a surprise, and I view it as a necessary addition to the site. However, I have received concerns from some residents about the increased levels of traffic on the roundabout where the signage is located. In light of these concerns, I believe that any signage present on this roundabout should be seen as beneficial in alleviating these worries and helping to improve road safety. In addition to traffic concerns, there has also been some discussion among residents about potential littering issues on or around the range site. Therefore, I feel that including signage that encourages visitors to keep the area clean and litter-free would be highly desirable. This will not only benefit our local environment, but also improve aesthetic appeal for both residents and visitors alike. Finally, I would like to note that based on my observations, all signage appears to be well illuminated and within proper guidelines. This ensures visibility for drivers and pedestrians without causing any obvious disruption or disturbance to nearby properties. In conclusion, while there may have been some initial concerns raised about the new signage at the range site, overall it seems that it's been well received by the community. As representatives of our constituents' interests, we will continue to monitor any developments and address any further concerns should they arise. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. Those are...
If we may just note that the monitoring officer, Councillor Lay, as he said, is a director of Gateway 14 Limited, but the monitoring officer has given a dispensation which was announced at full council last week, I believe, and extends to this committee. And since the councillor is not here as a voting member of the committee, that is quite appropriate. We received an email from him.
Thank you. I will now open this item up for debate. Would anybody like to start? Councillor Warbyce?
I have absolutely no objections to this at all, and I think we should approve this application. The signage is essential. You can't have anonymous buildings, even though aesthetically they look quite interesting. I would like to just add the note that I'd like to see consistency across the site, particularly for visitors and the totems, so that the drivers and visitors would recognise that this is a directional sign, so they know it's telling them where to go. So,
are you making a formal proposal that we...
I'd like to, I'm proposing that we accept the
Right. Do I have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Lawrence, thank you. On the subject of consistency, I think I completely agree with you. And I do think that I read in the paper, maybe Gemma might be able to help, that whatever, I know it's an express consent for signage and it's not a planning application, but it still has to respect the character of the locality. So if this, I think they're quite tasteful totem signs. Actually, when I heard the word totem, I thought, gosh, are they going to be huge, great things? But they do actually look quite tasteful. But if this is the first one, is there, you know, can that sort of set the precedent so that the others have to fit in with the character?
Yeah, I think that's it, Chair. I'd be hesitant in putting a note on because this realistically relates to the range rather than the whole of Gateway 14. But you're absolutely right. The signage we've got will be something we compare and look against when we get the next application. So I probably don't think an informative note would help with that one. But absolutely the fact that we've granted this one, they will have to be cohesive. And certainly that's the way we've been treating other applications in terms of the materials and the style and design have had to evolve through the site, so it takes account of its neighbours, and I'd expect no less with the advert consent.
So hopefully any subsequent applications from the other users on Gateway 14 might have to follow suit in order to get their consent. So does anybody else wish to make a comment on this debate? Councillor Lawrence.
I would just like to say, is there any consideration on the totem pole signs for them being a back colour of green, which might blend with the background better than the dark navy blue?
Sorry, can you speak into the mic? I couldn't quite get what you said.
I'm just making the point on the totem pole signs in particular, or not only those, would consideration be given to them being a green background rather than a dark navy blue?
I think that we have what we've got, and that is their colours of their, you know, corporate logo. So I think we have to accept what they've put, and we can't change the colours. That's their corporate colour.
Well, then that throws into the debate. If that's their corporate colour and it's signage, totem pole, it's signage for the site, then other sites on the Gateway 14 project will have their own corporate colours.
Yeah, when I said they might want to conform, I was thinking more of the size and the style rather than the colour. But maybe Gemma could come in.
Yeah, perhaps. So the dark blue is a Gateway 14 colour rather than a Range and Wilco colour. So the Range is navy, I think, from the top of the illuminated signage, and the Wilco is orange. But that slightly petrol-y dark blue is a Gateway 14 colour, and that is replicated through the buildings. So something I would expect that other totems would all be that similar colour, and it would be the logo on the signs that might be a different colour, which we'd obviously have to see corporately how they all knitted together. Maybe the style, maybe the lettering might be something we can look at, but that colour, that blue, I probably would expect to be throughout the site, depending what signage they propose. Thank you.
Any further comments? If not, then we haven't made any changes to the conditions, so they will be as laid out in our papers. I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. This vote will be at the bottom of your ModGov screen rather than the top. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. That is 7 votes for, so that is unanimous.
Thank you. So I'm now just going to propose that we have a very, very short 5-minute break. So we'll reconvene the meeting at 10 because we've got a couple of administrative items to deal with in that 5 minutes. So just a very short break until 10 a.m. Thank you. Welcome back. We will now move on to item 7B, DC 24-02251 at the First Coombs Scout Group, Coombswood Drive, Stowmarket, Suffolk. And I will invite the case officer, Nikita Goodrich, to introduce the application to the committee.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, may we just quickly check that Councillor Patchett doesn't need to make any declarations or of interest or personal site visits, who's now arrived.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. So the only declaration was obviously the first application, which was in my ward. So all others, I should be clear.
And did you receive an email from Haughley Parish Council?
Yeah, all emails have received. Yeah, I've had a look through. Thanks.
Thank you. Right, over to you, Nikita.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. This is application DC 24-02251 at the First Coombs Scout Group in Coombswood Drive, Stowmarket. The application proposes the replacement of an existing driveway which is of the same alignment and level as the existing. The reason for this application being brought to committee is due to the land being council-owned. This is the site location plan showing the areas the works are proposed. The Scouts headquarters is also shown on this plan, labelled as Hall. I don't think I can see the cursor, but yeah, labelled as Hall. This is the aerial map showing that the site is predominantly surrounded by residential properties and some sports fields. This is a wider view showing that further south there are some agricultural fields. Here is the constraints map. The site is within the settlement boundary of Stowmarket and there's a footpath that runs along the northeast of the site. This is the existing driveway layout. This shows that there is a portion of the driveway that has an existing asphalt surface. This also shows the existing surface water system which runs around the headquarters building. Here is the proposed servicing, which shows the area to be reconstructed, marked with blue crosses. The length of the driveway subject to the reconstruction measures at approximately 55 metres. The proposed driveway would be a porous surface, which would either be porous asphalt or gravel-filled modular units to prevent mud and debris being taken onto the public highway, as well as reduce long-term maintenance costs. This is the drainage plan showing that there will be a perforated pipe, which is the black dotted line running along the driveway, with a non-perforated pipe marked with a red dotted line at the end of the driveway, which leads to the existing surface water system. This is the drainage long section, which further elaborates on the drainage proposed and shows again the extent of both the perforated and non-perforated pipes. Moving on to site photos, this is the view facing east with the existing car park shown beyond the wooden gates. This is also a view facing east, but from a position further back. This shows the condition of the existing driveway with the stone surface and the numerous potholes. This is a view facing west, showing the vegetation along the driveway. This is a view further west towards Coombswood Drive. And this is a closer view, showing again the condition of the driveway. This is a snippet from Google Street View, which shows the area of the driveway which has an existing asphalt surface and is remaining unchanged. To conclude, the recommendation is to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from members? If not, I'd just like to ask a question about the existing asphalt section of the driveway, which does not appear within the red line. Is that part of highways or is that privately owned?
I believe that it has a right of way from most of the people around the area, so I don't believe it's owned by one particular person or the highway. Everyone just has access to it.
So it sounds as if it's sort of nobody really is taking. I mean, who is responsible for its upkeep?
I believe highways? No.
I think we had a look on Land Registry for a land search and it's coming up with a list of names. So there seems to be some ownership there that's not county highways, but the kind of personal ownership, maybe not specifically. So it is outside our application site and it would be somebody's responsibility and presumably the Scout Club would have access over it. But I would say that's probably getting beyond our remit, Chair, but hopefully that helps.
I realise it's not a planning matter, but clearly if they're going to do up the driveway from the edge of their property and the bit leading to the public highway becomes unusable, it then doesn't serve its purpose anymore. That's why I was just interested and whether that was going to be maintained properly, because whilst it's a good idea to maintain the surface, if you can't get there, it might cause a problem. Councillor Warboys, can I see your hand going up there?
Thank you, Chair. It came from the photographs, which I hadn't seen before. Well, it's noticeable there's a lot of wear and tear at the edges of the existing driveway. Will the new drive be wider, or will they be repairing the verges as well?
It's not proposed to be repairing the verges, but I assume that the kind of the maintenance and the repair of the existing will also kind of involve the repair of all the potholes and the kind of disrepair of the rest of the driveway, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's not proposed that along the sides of it will be changed, but yeah, the potholes will be filled in and a better material will be used.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at paragraph 6.3 on page 43, where the proposal is either porous asphalt, as you described in your presentation, or gravel-filled modular units. Are we able to condition one or the other? Because it seems to me gravel-filled modular units are just as susceptible to potholes in the future, rather than a porous asphalt which would hold together.
We could do. I was going to ask Nikita if they given an indication of their preference at all, or they've literally proposed either or. Yeah. I don't see why we couldn't condition one of their options if that's preference in that case.
So are you proposing that we suggest one now, or will that be subject to approval by the planning department? Is that what you meant, Gemma?
We could possibly go either way on it. If members feel strongly that the porous asphalt is the solution, then we may wish to condition that. If you want to leave us some wiggle room to take that away to double check with the Scouts Club, which I'll probably suggest, then perhaps you delegate us some authority, but perhaps we can review.
I certainly don't see myself an expert on driveway materials, and I don't know which one would be better than the other. So I don't know what the rest of the committee feel, but maybe we should leave it up to the planning officers to make sure that an appropriate porous, the most appropriate of the ones that they've suggested is used. If that can be conditioned, does that sort of make sense? Councillor Haddingham.
My thought is that the modular porous gravel-filled units are going to be more, they'll drain better into the subsoil than a tarmac surface, even if it is porous. Furthermore, that if potholes crop up somewhere, you can probably take an individual module out and replace it rather more easily than trying to patch an existing tarmac surface. So I would say the jury's out on that one.
Did you want to come back on that, Gemma?
No, I think you're absolutely right. They've both got their benefits and problems, and perhaps your suggestion, Chair, that we can take that away and agree which one and a bit more information before we issue a decision, or by condition might just take us that bit further on it.
Thank you. Any further comments from members, or does somebody want to make a proposal? Councillor Elkin?
I'm happy to propose. This is
Are you happy to propose with an additional condition about the final material to be agreed by the planning department, or whatever the words are?
yes, I think it was to be left for discussion with the planning officers and the applicant, wasn't it? So yes.
So do we have a seconder? Councillor Linda? Have you got some words we can put in this extra condition?
Sorry, yes, Chair, I'm just busily typing. 2 seconds. There we go.
Anybody else have any comments they wish to make before we go take this to a vote? I'm just waiting for... okay, Councillor Patchett.
Thank you, Chair. I just what I wouldn't want to do to impose on the Scouts who possibly haven't got a vast amount of funds is if we mandate to them a certain type of surface that's vastly outweighs the other in cost, if we are saying we aren't driveway experts on materials, I wouldn't want to arbitrarily impose one on them that was vastly more expensive, because obviously these organisations don't have huge sort of amounts of money. So I'd like to sort of bear that in mind as well, that we don't impose one that is too expensive for them to actually fit. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence?
I don't disagree with the thought process there, but what I'm concerned about is that we increasingly get presented with applications with an either-or, and this is an either-or. So we don't really know, as a planning committee, what we're approving. And I would like to see more definition before it comes to the committee of what we're actually being approving.
I think that's a fair comment, and I think I'm hoping that Councillor Patchett's worries about the pricing it out for the Scouts and they won't be able to afford it. I think the way the condition works is that they come to you with what they're going to do, and the planning officers then have to say yes or no. But presumably it will be one or other of the ones they've mentioned in the application, and then they come back to the planning officer, who then looks at the pros and cons and agrees whether it's the right thing or not. I think that's how it works, isn't it?
What I was going to suggest, Chair, if we put an additional condition on, it takes time, it's another 8 weeks, and there is a cost associated with that for the Scouts. So what I would suggest, if we can, that we would be delegating to the Chief Planning Officer to agree details of the final surface material before we make a decision, because that way we make sure we don't use the Scouts' time, money or other resources unnecessarily, because hopefully it would be a quick conversation. We get that information and we can actually approve this decision. But I absolutely take the point about the options. We'll pick that up in the future.
Does that, is that okay with our proposer and seconder? Yep.
Yes, I think they've got two clear things that they've already proposed, and it's just a matter of discussing which of those that they prefer to go with. And so I think that's fine.
And maybe planning officers can take note of Councillor Lawrence's concerns that we are having an either or does make it much more difficult for us to make a final decision, and next time maybe you can ask to pin them down before it comes to committee. Right, so if there's no further comments, I will ask the governance officer to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress on ModGov.
Councillor Penny?
Yes, happy to take your vote verbally. 4. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. With Councillor Patchett back on the committee, that makes 8 votes for, so that is now unanimous.
Thank you. So do we just need another short break to get the planning officers to swap over?
A 5-minute break.
Yeah, another just 5-minute break for the next planning officer to sort himself out on the front bench. Thank you. Welcome back. We will now consider item 7A, DC 23-05721, land to the north side of Station Road, Haughley, Suffolk. And I will invite the case officer, Alex Scott, to introduce the application to committee. Over to you, Alex.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Yes, as Chairman's mentioned, item 7A, application reference DC-23/0572. This is a full planning application for the erection of 29 dwellings and associated infrastructure at land on the north side of Station Road and east of Millfields in Haughley. And the application before you is an 100% affordable housing scheme, and we have Robert Feeks here from our strategic housing department to assist on that side of things. So the site is allocated for 18 to 31 new homes in the development plan at policy HAU4 of the Haughley Neighbourhood Plan. And it's considered by your officers that the application before you conforms with the requirements of that policy. Now there is a slight matter to address in terms of the affordable housing component. Policy HAU4 includes up to 35% affordable housing. However, your policy SPO2 of the Joint Local Plan does allow for a greater affordable housing provision subject to it conforming to other policies of the development plan. And that particular policy being newer, more recent, and superior to the neighbourhood plan in terms of hierarchy, then it's a material consideration, and it addresses the point in the neighbourhood plan policy, which is out of date because of that more recent provision. So just a procedural matter there to begin with. So on to the presentation. This is the location of Haughley within the district, just for the avoidance of doubt. And then the approximate location of the site within Haughley, outlined in red here. There we are. So it is to the north of Station Road and to the east of Millfields and to the north of Harvest Close. And here are some aerial maps of the site, so a bit of visual context. This is the constraints plan. So the site within the village settlement boundary as per the neighbourhood plan, and as aforementioned, it is a housing allocation within that plan as well. We also have a grade 2 listed building here at Hill Farmhouse, and that is referred to in the report and has been addressed by your heritage officers, who consider there to be a very low level of less than substantial harm to that asset in terms of the continued loss of agricultural land and setting. However, as also addressed in the report, officers consider the public benefits of the scheme to outweigh that level of harm identified. There are a few public rights of way, none formally crossing or adjacent to the site, and there is one here leading from Station Road down to Fishponds Way in the south, and also here across the fields up to Green Road in the north. Now I'm advised from the chairman that there may be some informal public rights of way in the vicinity as well. But those aren't formally marked on this particular plan. There are also some overhead power lines across the site, and set out in the allocations policy, these will need to be undergrounded, or the development should avoid the pylons. I believe the current proposal is to underground the pylons. So that element of the proposal has been addressed. This is the site location plan submitted with the application. Now the proposed layout, so the proposed main access will be here in the bottom corner, and there is also a proposed footpath connection to the existing footpath just off the screen here at the bottom of Millfields, and that is a requirement of the allocations policy, and that is a proposal that is proposed to be secured by way of condition. Now, the existing access is within the village 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, which I have some photographs of, and terminates approximately here just after Harvest Close. Now, I know there are some questions about that, and we will address those as we go through the consideration. Estate roads will be adoptable up to this point, as in dark grey. There's also public open space, essentially two areas. We have a smaller area here to the north, central area including the play equipment. That is a LEAP, which is a locally equipped area for play. So medium provision in terms of the play hierarchy. And at the bottom here we have further open space incorporating the flood risk attenuation basin, which will be predominantly dry with a little residual water there, but available as part of a walk around used by the public. We also have the proposed pumping station in the bottom corner here with separate access to Station Road in that location. As you can see, all dwellings have solar panels proposed, and they would all have air source heat pumps as shown on the formal site plan submitted. In terms of dwelling mix and sizes, we have a total of 6 one-bedroom dwellings proposed, 11 two-bedroom dwellings, 9 three-bedroom dwellings, and 3 four-bedroom dwellings. So predominantly 2, 3, and 1-bedroom dwellings proposed. There are also 6 bungalows proposed, and they would all be to the western site boundary, here, and at plots 1 and 2 here fronting the street scene. And we have some street scene elevations as we move forward. Proposed parking is to highway standards, so all 1, 2, and 3-bedroom dwellings would have 2 parking spaces and 3 parking spaces for the 4-bedroom dwellings, which are here and here. And it's the opinion of your officers that the density proposed is reflective of the general character of this edge of Haughley, with a good standard of garden sizes and an outlook for proposed dwellings. So moving on to the next plan, which is the accommodation plan. As stated at the top, this would be an 100% affordable housing scheme, and there would be a mix of social rent and shared ownership. The social rent is shown in red, and there would be 16 units. Shared ownership, there would be 13 units, and they're indicated in blue for you there. And so this is just showing the character proposed across the site. So this is all the front elevations together. And some street scenes for you. So at the top we have from the south, from the principal Station Road highway looking north. And then the western edge next to dwellings on Millfields and the elevations proposed there. Just give an idea of character and scale. And then we have all the individual plans and elevations just for completeness there. We'll come back to those if there are any questions from members. Yeah, there's quite a few of them. So on to some photographs. So this first photograph is the Station Road street scene. And you can see here the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit start of, which is adjacent to Harvest Close. And then again a bit closer, this is the entrance to Harvest Close here. 30-mile-an-hour speed limit begins here. And to give an idea of the character. And the queue for the bungalows is actually taken, I understand, from this dwelling here. And so onto the site itself. This is from the existing field access, which is the way you access the site presently. And here you can see the overhead power lines proposed to be undergrounded as part of the scheme. And the eastern edge is delineated by this existing low hedgerow, which is shown to be retained on the layout plan. Although if you were minded to approve, we would request a condition for a more detailed hard and soft landscaping scheme. And this is again showing the eastern boundary. And then from the eastern boundary, looking back to dwellings in Harvest Close on the opposite side of Station Road. And then turning round, and you can see the rear of dwellings at Millfields, and then turning again. And this last photograph is a view away from the site, out of the village, along Station Road, in that direction into the countryside. Now this last slide is a point of comparison. So the layout you can see here was the previous outline approval, which is still live. We don't have a reserve matters approved following that. However, the applicant has until November to submit reserve matters, and that would keep that live. So in a sense, we do have a extant planning permission on there for the same number of dwellings as is now proposed. The difference being there would only be 35% affordable housing on what there is approved at present. There would be 100% what is proposed presently. Now, as part of that outline approval, matters of access were considered, and we have approval for the access location. So it is a similar location, but as you might be able to see, the access currently proposed is now further into the village, further away from that 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. And again, we had the footpath conditioned. So yes, keeping the application similar in that respect. Right, so that concludes the presentation, and your officer recommendation, as set out in the papers, is to grant planning permission subject to a Section 106 agreement, which will secure the type and tenure of affordable housing. It will secure on-site public open space and play equipment provision. And it will also include a contribution towards off-site provision to make up the shortfall as outlined by your public realm officers. And the principle of that has been agreed by your community officers. So that is something, if you were minded to approve, we would look to secure as part of Section 106. And there would also be a contribution towards education and monitoring contributions as set out by Suffolk County Council. That is also detailed in your report. And approval will be subject to the conditions as set out in the report, with the addition of 2 other conditions as recently discussed with the chairman present. And those would be to make sure that the dwellings are building regulations M42 compliant, they have adequate space standards, and to secure the sustainable construction, air source heat pumps and solar panels as proposed as well, so just with 2 additional conditions. So that concludes my presentation. As set out in the papers, officer recommendation of approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members to the case officer, or we also have Robert Feeks if you've got any questions specific to the affordable housing aspect. Councillor Linder.
I wonder if there are any conditions possible to impose regarding fencing off this pond of water. Children are in the close vicinity, and that would be a danger. Thank you.
Okay, no, it's certainly something we have considered. Now, in consultation with the strategic, our lead local flood authority at County Council, that basin would need to be overlooked by dwellings. And the current proposal shows dwellings with active windows facing it. That is considered to address that point of safety. So we're satisfied as part of your officers.
You'd like to come back on that?
I would. So having windows facing the pond would be sufficient to stop 3-year-olds tottering into the water and drag them out in time. I really feel that would not be sufficient.
Yeah, it's all about vigilance. Now the pond, as graded, it wouldn't be full of water all the time. It would have, it would be levelled, and we would want to avoid fencing the pond. If it's too deep, we have to fence it, and there are aesthetic issues with that. So the way the pond is designed, we don't believe, having taken advice, it's required to fence that. And it's not something we would want to pursue.
All right, thank you for your answer.
Councillor Penny.
Just in relation to that, is there any detail about planting around the perimeter of the pond, which would assist with safety?
Sure. We don't have precise details of a landscaping scheme. If you were minded to approve, that would be secured by way of conditions, and that would be something we should negotiate. We take advice from your landscaping advisors and also the lead local flood authority in terms of what planting would be appropriate within the basin and surrounding, to make sure that has time to, yes.
Councillor Elkin.
Thank you. It's another play space question. I think you described it as a leap, but it's technically too small, isn't it? It doesn't quite meet the space requirements. I think it said it was 270 metres squared, not 400. Is that sort of, I can understand it's quite a small site and they've got to fit the suds in, so presumably that's why that has happened. Is there anything they can do to sort of offset it in terms of adding to facilities elsewhere in the community? And I think the Mid Suffolk Disability Forum said there was no provision for children who use a wheelchair. I don't know if they were talking about this particular play area or anywhere in the village. So, yeah, that was my questions.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yes, it is smaller than usual, which is a point which was raised. Now we've consulted your communities officers who have advised we seek a financial contribution as part of this to make up the shortfall. And likely that would be used to improve facilities elsewhere in the village. King George V playing area has been mentioned. Yeah, it's something we would look to secure by way of Section 106. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, the reason it is so small, space is required elsewhere to the site to give a good character, a good layout, public open space elsewhere. And the attenuation basin as well is quite land hungry. That's the reason it is so small. But it's something we have looked at. It's a compromise. So, yeah.
Do you want to come back on that, Councillor Elkin?
Yes, it was just so that the funding for some additional equipment elsewhere in the village is going to be secured.
That's part of the proposal, yes,
Definitely.
yes, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Lawrence?
Thank you, Chair. It's strange that we're concentrating on the play areas and not so much on the housing, but I have the same similar question in that it's not clear to me on this leaps in these developments. Are they publicly accessible for users from the rest of the village? Because here you've got it hidden, if you like, behind the attenuation pond. It's not very inviting to other members of the village. And if there's an ongoing maintenance charge to the residents on this estate for maintaining that playground, they will be anti other members of the village coming in and wearing it out, possibly damaging it. So I'm trying to fit how these leap areas in private estates are welcoming to the rest of the village. We approve them as planning committee, but are they really providing the answers? Thank you.
Okay, in answer to the first question, I mean, it would be available to other members of the village, and that's the first point. Whether it's inviting or not, I mean, where it is, that would be open to interpretation, I suppose. But yeah, in terms of who is maintaining this, I think we still need to conclude on that as part of our Section 106 agreement negotiations. It's not clear at the moment whether that would be parish council or a private company. So we need to conclude on that. But as stated, there would be a contribution to improving existing facilities elsewhere in the village, King George V playing area, which is more central. So there would be a bit of benefit there as well. But essentially it would be open to all, but I do take the point of where it is and accessibility. Yeah.
Any further questions? Councillor Hardingham?
Yeah, I've got...
I've also got Councillor Warboys, but if Councillor Hardingham, you go next.
Yeah, I've got a number of questions, actually. Perhaps we could explore with the housing officer the arguments to and fro over the proportion of social housing, because the parish council obviously feel that 35% is enough. Does this having 100% social and affordable housing, is that a disadvantage in some respect?
I would say not. I think it's a benefit arising from the scheme.
So, but would there be valid arguments to say that it should be less?
I think Alex has explained the policy framework here and the way in which SPO2 comes into play. On the question of 100% affordable developments, it is something which we have looked into and considered in anticipation of this question. And no, I've never been able to find any evidence of any harm arising from that. If the concern is around the perception of the 1950s, 60s, 70s council estate, I do not think this is comparable. This site includes a high proportion of affordable home ownership, and with those shared ownership dwellings on the scheme, they are home ownership, and in the long term, you would expect them via a process called staircasing to staircase to full open market housing.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want.
Did you want your next questions then?
Sorry. Yeah. So in terms of the adoption of highways, I note that the northern sections of the roads are not going to be adopted. So then the question is, who remains responsible for the cost of upkeep of those?
Well, that would be through the future owners, presumably. I think mostly. Could we have the layout up again? Okay, so you might be able to see. Okay, so adopted up to here, and then we have other access, private driveways in effect up to here. But as you can see, they're predominantly the shared ownership, which, as Robert has just set out, they would eventually become home-owned. Is that owner-occupied? Yes. Yeah. Thank you. So they would be responsible for the upkeep of these sections of the highway.
So just to follow up on that, so if one of the owners isn't willing to contribute to the cost of maintenance, how does the job get done? If the roads need maintenance at some point in the future, and the owners who are responsible can't agree on how to move forward, or some of them are not willing to pay, what's the outcome?
I think that might be a legal matter, not a planning matter.
That would be a private legal matter of deeds and residents' associations, etc.
Would you like to come in, Gemma?
Yeah, I just wanted to say it might be something we can ask Flagship momentarily because there are a variety of options as to who owns which bit and how they own it. And I do note that the, I'm going to get the wrong term, not shared ownership, the social rent, thank you, at the moment there, which is which. The red at the top is separate, so where the Flagship have got plans to maintain some ownership might be something we could find out a bit
Can
more.
we ask them when it's their turn? We've got some questions we can ask them about maintenance of public open space and private drives. Did you have any further questions, Councillor Hardingham?
Yeah, well, I have got one more question.
Well, just one more, and then we'll go to Councillor Warboys.
The question of exploring access to the rest of the village, has there been any attempt to look at alternative ways of, other than using the pavement down the road, which would be quite a long way round to the main sports area and the school? Has there been any attempt to look for alternative routes direct to the school? The case officer mentioned that there were possibly other routes that are used informally in the village.
The informal routes was from me, because I know that I have used some footpaths that are not proper footpaths around Haughley, and I wasn't quite sure how far they extended, and they don't quite, as I understand it, extend to this plot, but I thought it was something I might ask the parish council about, because if they could use the informal path that used to run along the backs of the houses to the King George playing field, that would be brilliant, but it doesn't at the moment run that far. But that's probably my muddle as to how far along that informal path went. But I'm going to ask the parish council about that, just warning him.
Thank you. Yeah.
I don't know if Alex has got anything else to say about that.
No, I mean, the part of the proposal is to extend the footway, the pavement at the front, and I mean, it would be expected that people would walk along that to facilities at the centre of the village as the primary route. But there may be other informal routes that could be explored.
Thank you. Councillor Warboys.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, one of the matters, concerns raised by Highways was about swept paths for large refuse vehicles. The conditions, we've actually met all the Highways concerned. I just didn't quite find that specifically mentioned in the conditions, and that led me to thinking that the plots seemed quite compact, and I wondered if we'd sort of really considered bin storage areas. Particularly at present, people have two storage refuse bins. We're going to, in the future, maybe we're looking at 3 storage bins plus an optional 4th. And I just wondered if that sort of detail was in the planning.
Yeah, I mean, the proposal has been assessed by Highways in terms of refuse collection vehicles moving around the sites. Locations of bins have been discussed. I believe the most recent layout, which we're showing, does show acceptable to Suffolk County Council bin locations. So they would be in an acceptable location, which allows them to be, emptied. But there should be conditions ensuring that as well, I'd suggest.
Any further questions? Councillor Patchett.
Yep, thank you, Chair. So just in respect to the drainage ditches or the existing ditches that sort of border the site, will it be clear who will own them and who will be responsible for the sort of the maintenance of them, the sort of the clearing out? Just because I know in developments in Stowmarket it has been unclear who owns them, and ditches haven't been cleared out. So is it clear on this development?
I don't believe the red line includes the drainage ditch, simply the access, but that would be piped and bridged as per details that we would look at and approve to make sure, free flow of water. In terms of who's responsible for them and cleaning them out, that would be the owners, but I'm not clear on who that is, I'm afraid.
Well, we have had significant problems on other developments, and we need to start establishing when we get these applications in who actually owns these existing ditches, because if they're buying the land off of farmers and the farmers own and maintain the ditches, surely that ownership and maintenance burden then goes on to the freeholder in this case, which is Flagship. So someone has to take ownership of these ditches because down the line that they do cause problems.
I share your concerns, but I'm not sure planning is the way to control drainage. Land ownership is not a material to planning, but maybe the planning officers can come back on that.
Yeah, I'm happy to. Unfortunately, we're into land ownership versus planning, and it is up to the landowner to follow through with their riparian rights, whether that's maintaining dredging or other maintenance to keep the waterway free. If the waterway was in the red line, we could talk about that, but from Alex's point of view, it's not in our red line. If there were some requirement of, as you say, how that interacts, that unfortunately is up to the land ownership, and whatever land is in this parcel is this parcel, and if the farmer continues to own the ditch, it is still their responsibility regardless of that. The only thing we can do is make sure that the bit that runs under the site is appropriately dealt with, and I think I saw a condition to that effect. Was there a piping, or is it one that we dealt with? Was it part of the access? Surface water verification and construction surface water management plan, I think, would cover that. So we would do what we can by condition, but certainly in terms of that management of ditches, it is about land ownership, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Councillor Penny.
Yeah, just a question in connection to the position of the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit signs. Is it possible for the developer to negotiate an extension of the position of the signs to beyond the built-up area?
I've got a quick note here from discussions I've had with County Highways, if I may. So the speed limit is set by a traffic regulation order, as I understand. These are only made after consultation with the local highway authority, that's at Suffolk County Council. They're not normally subject to a planning condition. These can affect visibility displays and how those are calculated as well, so there's that particular issue if we're going to be moving the signs. And SCC do not usually rely on the moving of speed limit signs when they're assessing the acceptability of accesses and visibility displays, so that's what I have from Highways, if that's helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Elkin.
Thank you. I had two questions, if that's okay. The first one was just a clarification on page, I think it's 21, the strategic housing comments. The last comment is request accommodation plan is updated as it contains conflicting information. Is that sort of been superseded? I think that was from May.
The comment was around in terms of the documents that Alex actually lists on the decision notice as to whether or not any of them need to be updated. So if Alex is satisfied that the documents he has for the decision notice are acceptable, then that's
okay
sorted.
Thank you. And the other one was just to come back to Councillor Patchett's point about ditches. I appreciate it's outside the red line area, but is this a sort of development where homeowners would be given a pack by Flagship, a sort of welcome to your new home, here's how everything works type situation?
I mean, it's not a development of a scale which we would normally do that, but perhaps it's a question for the applicant.
Where I was going with that was, similarly, my community's had endless problems trying to unravel after this winter's flooding who owns which ditches, who's responsible. So if there was some information just saying, by the way, the ditch behind you is owned by this landowner, is their responsibility to clear it, it might save a lot of headache and struggle further down the line. So it was just a thought.
Thank you. If I may, I'd like to ask a couple of questions about the boundary treatment, because I think this development is sort of on the top of the hill, and if you're coming from Old Newton, you'll see it from the road. And at the moment, there's only that quite low hedge, which doesn't even run all the way to the road. I couldn't find a blue line plan as to land ownership, but has there been any consideration to landscaping outside of the red line area, which may be in the same ownership? And also, I'd also like to ask what the surface treatment along the road edge between the attenuation basin and the road is likely to be, because at the moment that looks like a public open space. And is it going to be direct access from the road? Is really what I'm asking. Or is there a hedge going to be planted?
The existing hedge is outside of the red line, and that is shown to be retained. And to the frontage, we have. I mean, this is just really broad master planning here, though. But a hedge is shown on this layout. You then have the ditch beyond that, so access for people directly to the highway would be via the existing pavements here. So that sort of restricts people wandering out onto the highway.
And is that, I think you said earlier, there isn't a sort of master landscaping plan, but is that within a condition that we can make sure that that boundary with the road is certainly maintained and enforced? I'm still a little concerned about the eastern edge, but that probably will come up in debate.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are conditions that we're recommending, a detailed scheme of hard and soft landscaping works. So we'd look to ensure some more structural landscaping, particularly to the more open edge, retaining hedgerows where appropriate, and yeah. So we would have control of that, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any further questions of the planning officer or our housing officer? If not, I will now move on to public speakers. And first of all, we have Parish Council. We have Councillor Gerald Brown from Haughley Parish Council. If you would like to press the button, I will time you with my 3-minute egg timer, and over to you. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, Councillors, I'm Gerald Brown, Chairman of Haughley Parish Council, and thank you for allowing me to speak in connection with this planning application. Following our council meeting in May, we submitted a response to the application for 29 houses, and that is included in your committee papers. I do not propose to reiterate that, other than to acknowledge that the site was identified in our neighbourhood plan for residential development with a target of up to 35% social housing. Traffic, especially HGV traffic through Haughley, is of great concern to residents, representing the #1 concern that has been identified to me during recent years. The whole of Station Road is subject to a 7.5-tonne weight limit. Since our meeting in May, we have received a traffic count report, which we commissioned from consulting civil engineers, a copy of which was forwarded to you prior to the meeting. A summary of the findings relating to Station Road is shown on sheet 3, including, and if we look at the final column, it's about halfway down for Station Road, and it includes the percentage of commercial vehicles using Station Road that has increased from an average of 6.4% during the preceding 5 counts to 10.2%. That's a massive increase. The graph on sheet 8 indicates that the road type
by percentage of commercial vehicles using this C road is close to the top range of a minor rural road. Our parish council requests a planning condition for an effective constructive management plan to be agreed with the parish council and others before work on site commences and is acted upon during the construction phase. The traffic count report provides supporting evidence for the need to enhance highway safety near the site entrance, along Station Road, access routes through parts of Haughley. As a parish council, we have a strong biodiversity interest group and are of the opinion that the landscape planning is inadequate. Additional trees and hedging would be beneficial, together with better landscaping to the front and the side to help with traffic management, and to the rear of the site for wildlife, and to the rear of Millfields homes to help with screening from neighbours. Submitted plans show that trees are to be planted in various gardens, which will make the management under the biodiversity net gain duty difficult for the District Council to monitor. I thank you for this opportunity to address the committee.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of Haughley Parish Council? Councillor Elkin?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a little bit about the issue that was raised about the difference between the neighbourhood plan view on the percentage of affordable housing and what's being proposed, whether there was any thoughts on that from the parish council.
Obviously, we would prefer it to be limited to 35%, but to be quite honest, I must leave that to your committee to actually make the decision on it. We suggested 35% when we were drafting the neighbourhood plan to make what we thought at the time with professional advice that it was a reasonable compromise. But I've heard tonight, heard today that there is a planning document that, from the District Council which has overrides that particular recommendation.
Was that, did you want to come back? Your mic's still on, or are you finished? Councillor Penny, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, it was just a follow-up to Lucy's question, really. Why, obviously, would you prefer it restricted to 35%? I don't follow.
In order to try and maintain a reasonable mix of housing, rather than having the whole estate being one particular type of housing.
Am I correct in thinking that your concern about traffic is about the construction phase, more or less exclusively? Thank you.
I would have to agree with you with that. The reasoning behind that is that we appreciate there is going to be domestic traffic on a regular basis, but the concern isn't so much with cars going through. We have bottlenecks in different parts of the village, including at the end of Station Road, and it is a severe bottleneck. And it's a means, or at least we're trying to control the number of large commercial vehicles going through because we just get so many hold-ups, traffic jams, big vehicles having to reverse back up Old Street, up Station Road, and it becomes very, very difficult for residents to actually accept and manage. But we are, by asking for to be involved with the traffic management plan, we hope that we can mitigate the effect on residents and allow the development to actually proceed.
Thank you. Did you want to come back, Councillor Elkin?
Sorry, it's a separate issue, but I just wanted to ask, I think somewhere in the papers it said that there'd been disappointment that you felt the developers hadn't really been in discussion with you. And one of the issues that was raised was the play space being a bit under-spec'd in terms of size, and this proposal to have some funding for the community to put other play provision elsewhere, including possibly provision for disabled children. I just wanted to check, as you hadn't had a chance to discuss that with the developers, did that meet the satisfaction of the parish council? Does that seem like a reasonable compromise to you?
I accept that we were given a presentation, but consultation was very, very limited, and certainly nothing in relation to this particular application.
And in terms of the play space, this proposal has been put forward. Can you put funding to use elsewhere in the village? Is that something you've had chance to discuss, or not really?
Certainly not had the opportunity to discuss it. My understanding and hope is that Flagship would actually maintain the responsibility for the play equipment, and perhaps the representative from Flagship will be able to confirm that one way or the other. I would be concerned if we were being presented with a play equipment as a parish council to have to actually take that on as a maintenance liability. We've got other play areas in the parish. I'm not saying that we don't want more, but obviously they are expensive to maintain, as I'm sure that you're aware.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a couple of questions myself. Has Haughley Parish Council considered doing anything about extending the 30-mile-an-hour speed limit slightly further out of Haughley on Station Road? Because I understand that it's not part of the planning, but maybe something Haughley Parish Council can take up with County Council in due course.
I believe that I'm right in saying that we haven't actually made any formal application, but certainly we have had discussions with our county councillor. It's one of those things that if this is approved, it would seem appropriate to take those negotiations further. Thank you.
And I'd also like to come back to the informal footpath that runs along the back of the houses slightly further to the west, and I believe joins into that housing estate somewhere near the care home. Has there been any consideration of extending that informal footpath? Does it even still exist? Is it still an informal footpath? Has there been any moves to try and formalise it or extend it towards this development? Because I noticed it's got a bit of public open space at the northern edge.
The footpath I happen to know fairly well. I like your expression of being an informal footpath. It is certainly not on the definitive map for footpaths. I am not aware of it being a permitted footpath. So people that are using it, and people do use it, informal is a very polite way of putting it. And I recall from about 6, 7, 8 years ago, there was a sign put up by the landowner, at least I assume it was by the landowner, it wasn't signed, saying that there was no right of access along that section of Field Headland.
But it's not featured in any of the Haughley planning, Haughley neighbourhood plan or any informal plans to extend the footpath network around that area?
Correct. Not on the cards at the moment.
I'd also like to just ask the planning officer in respect of your comment about the construction management plan. I noticed that is a condition that you've listed on our papers, but is there any way that the parish council can be part of the discussion about what that construction management plan is?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm absolutely fine. I think we don't include it specifically in the wording of our standard condition, but I've got no issue with adding that in if members would like to add that debate at the appropriate moment.
I mean, that would be a way that Haughley Parish Council could get some input into how the construction management traffic is taken through the village. Maybe that would be helpful. Are there any further questions of the Parish Council? Thank you. I will move on. We don't have an objector or a supporter, I understand that we have the agent here, Charlotte Powell, who hasn't got a sort of 3-minute representation to make, but maybe you would like to introduce yourself, and then I will open the up for questions from any members. Thank you.
Hi, yes, so I'm Charlotte and I'm the Land and Planning Manager at a landscape plan already, and that does show planting along the eastern boundary where we can, which is more towards the south around the pumping station, and we've planted along that strip that runs to the east, the narrow strip. We've also put trees within the dwellings that are on the eastern side. They have been planted there as a landscape feature rather than a B&G feature, because we can't count them because they are within residential gardens. So they're there to improve the landscape as you drive up Station Road rather than to help us with our B&G. We're removing the hedges on the south to allow access, but we have planted within the sites lots more, which gives us a 20% increase in hedgerow planting. Yeah, we've got so the play equipment can be secured by condition, and the contractor that we appoint to build will discuss that with us, what they can secure, and then we can run that past Alex. And we will maintain the play equipment, and the roads will also be at our expense to maintain as well, so that wouldn't be passed on to the tenants or the shared ownership residents. That would be within our duty. If anyone's got any more questions, let me know.
So I've just been advised that the microphone next, if you move along to the next seat, I think the microphone is slightly better. So I got a bit lost on your description of the landscaping. Do we have that as a plan, Alex, about the landscaping that Charlotte Powell was referring to? Because it was quite a bit difficult for us to take it all in. I just wonder if you put a plan up, and then you can just explain again what you're planning to do with the landscaping. Right, so are you talking to something more than what we've got in our plan there?
Yes, yeah, so Anne Westover, a landscape architect, has produced a detailed plan which we need to produce anyway, but also it helps us with our B&G assessments. So that little strip there to the southeast, that is fully planted up to provide screening as well as biodiversity enhancements and landscape enhancements for B&G. And then those residential dwellings to the east, they have, because we don't own the hedge remains with the farmer, we can't bolster it, so we've planted trees within their gardens which don't count towards B&G, but they are a landscape feature for us. And there's also planting throughout the open space, throughout the sites. Someone mentioned previously about the Suds Basin. We've got some details of some water-loving plants that we can plant throughout there, and the wildflower meadows, and everything within there, which I think brought us to 11% B&G as well on the site.
Can I just clarify, you've got some trees planted in people's, which will be their private garden, so they could just chop them down?
Yes, which is why they can't count towards B&G. They're not, let's hope they don't chop them down, but yeah, we're gonna try. We're gonna put them in the gardens.
I think the planning officer wants to come back on that.
Yeah, in terms of the question about just chopping them down, our standard condition would require them to remain there for at least 10 years to bed in, if you like. So we would have at least 10 years of them.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the agent? Councillor Patchett.
Hi, thanks, Chair. So obviously with you're planting trees on the eastern edge, but a bulk of the properties on the eastern edge have got east-facing solar panels, So have they sort of done any calculations as to how the trees that you're planting to the east are going to sort of block the solar panels and then they may become ineffective? Has sort of any calculations been done on that at all?
No, we haven't calculated the solar panels. That's also an indicative location. It might be more productive to put them on the western side of the roofs as well.
Any further questions? Councillor Warboy?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I've got a couple of questions. While we just mentioned the solar panels, you know, I do welcome the fact that you're putting them on all the houses. Have you considered putting battery storage systems in as well to accompany them? Because in terms of making the houses as efficient as possible to live in, battery storage systems are a good addition.
We have a huge team within Flagship that are looking into things like this. Yeah, it'll be within their remit. Once it's left my planning department, it would go to our team that are looking at making things cheaper to run and more efficient and energy efficient as well. So I don't know, but it is something that we are looking at, various different technologies as well.
Councillor Linda?
Sorry,
Did you want to come back, Councillor Warboys?
Well, maybe, but not. My second question was, my understanding is that most of these houses will eventually go into private ownership. Are there any restrictions on future owners in terms of permissive development, so people will be able to put conservatories on garages or sheds or whatever?
That's probably one for you, Alex.
Yeah.
Just one point, Councillor Warboys. When I was referring to coming into home ownership, I was referring to the shared ownership units, not the social rent ones. So I was only referring to some of the units being able to staircase to full home ownership in the longer term.
Oh, I understand. So it won't be the site
not the
as a
rental,
whole.
not the site as a whole.
I think that's the one with the blue spots on in the plan. Did you come? Are you going to come back on permitted development?
Yes, I'm not proposing to withdraw PD rights for any reason, but yeah, open to debate.
That is something that we consider in our debate. Councillor Linda.
I would like to ask you if there are different kinds of heat pumps with different levels of noise and how you propose to mitigate the noise problem for the neighbours.
There are, and I don't know which one we're providing in these dwellings. That hasn't been decided yet, so that would be down to the contractor that builds it, but I would assume that it would be this would have already been done as part of their process when they design air source heat pumps.
Thank you.
Did I see your hand, Councillor Elkin, as well?
Thank you. We just heard from the parish council that there wasn't a lot of communication. I was just wondering if you could commit to improving that, and particularly around this funding that's going to be for additional play equipment. So I know it does bring a cost for the parish if you're building more play spaces. So will you work with the parish for them to decide what they'd like to spend that money on?
Yes, I don't know if we are allowed to do that, but of course we can, because I guess that money would go to the council rather than to the parish council directly.
I think this is a Section 106 agreement, which will go to Mid Suffolk, as I understand it, for use by Haughley Parish Council to provide some play equipment in Haughley.
So it will be up to the parish council.
I think it'll be up to Mid Suffolk and Haughley Parish Council. Between them, I think they'll have to decide how that money's spent.
Can I have a second?
Yeah.
Thank you. It was just about the. I think we heard that the development isn't big enough to necessarily require kind of moving impacts for house owners. I didn't know if you would consider anything like that, and I was thinking specifically of letting people know who's responsible for road maintenance, who's responsible for ditch maintenance. And I also just wanted to mention the hedgehog fencing, because it gets installed, but if people don't know what it is or why it's there, you know, they just get blocked up. So it could be something really, it could be a sheet of A4, it doesn't have to be complicated, but it can help solve so many problems if people have that information when they move in.
So we do provide our residents with packs when they move into our homes. I don't know what's in those packs, but I'll check that we've got some details about the ecological enhancements as well, so they don't block them up or move bug hotels, etc. around the
That would be
estate.
brilliant. And I also think, I mean, I don't know about, I'm sure other people sitting next to me have spent quite a lot of time on the phone trying to help residents unravel kind of a few years down the line. It gets lost in the midst of time. Who's responsible for an unadopted bit of road? Who's responsible for the ditches? Just pinning it down when people move in would really help.
Yeah, we had looked into the ditches, and that they're not ours. I believe they are the county's.
If they're farm owned around the back of the site, they would be the farmer, presumably. Yeah.
We spoke with the county when we were looking at crossing the ditch. So maybe they are the farmers. We will ensure that the people know who owns them.
That would be just so helpful, because then people know where to go if it's blocked or if there's a problem or flooding. Or thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions of the applicant or agent? Can I just ask, I know you've committed to solar panels, air source heat pump and EV charging for all the dwellings. Are you also committed to fabric first sustainable construction methods? You know, are they going to be built with good insulation and all that other stuff that goes alongside it, having air source heat pumps to reduce the bills?
Yes, of course. So as part of Flagship's approach to all development, we try and provide the warmest, most insulated homes. We have high targets above and beyond building regs.
Thank you. Any further questions of the agent? If not, I will now move on to the ward members. Now, there are 2 ward members for Haughley. We have Councillor Pearson here today. I also have a statement, a written statement from Councillor Eburn, and I'm going to suggest that I read out Councillor Eburn's statement, and then we hear from Councillor Pearson, and then hopefully Councillor Pearson can take questions that might have arisen from Councillor Eburn's statement, if that's all right with you. So I will read out the statement from Councillor Eburn, who can't be with us today. So the outline application approved in November 2021 was for 29 homes, of which 10 were to be affordable. The site is included within the Haughley Parish Neighbourhood Plan at policy HAU4, as noted in the papers, but with up to 35% affordable homes. This Reserve Matters application is for 100% affordable. The site is at its most eastern edge of the village of Haughley and almost at the top of the hill before the road heads down, then up again towards Old Newton. This entrance to the village from Old Newton is subject to considerable speeding by drivers entering the village, and as such, a speed indicator device is often located here. While highways have not raised any objections, I hope the committee might consider any softer traffic calming, such as trees and shrubs along the road edge of the site to improve safety. This is especially in the context that there will be a children's play area only a few metres back from the road. Secondly, being in an elevated position, this site is seen across the fields and footpaths surrounding the village. There is some landscaping planned around the site, and I ask the committee whether this can be enhanced, particularly on the 2 field sides. This would also improve the biodiversity. Haughley has a very active nature group, and their SWIFT campaign has been particularly successful, for example. I know that there is landscaping condition for implementation and aftercare, and I would like assurance that this will be enforced given the amount of housing developments we have where newly planted trees and shrubs die and the developers are extremely slow to replace them. Thirdly, on the construction management, the access to the site through the village is via Fishponds Way, Old Street, Station Road Junction, where the co-op is, and the area gets extremely congested. 2 local businesses regularly using HGVs also pass through this junction several times a day, and it is vital that a construction management plan is discussed and agreed with the parish council before it is approved. Finally, I am pleased to see good sustainability measures proposed for this development. Thank you for your consideration, Rachel Eburn. So I'd now like to ask Councillor Pearson if she'd like to put her comments, and then I'll open it up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Most of what I wanted to say has actually been covered one way or another, but the two main points I feel are, firstly, that this ward and this parish in particular is a highly rural area, and so landscaping and biodiversity is really important, biodiversity management. The second point is with regards to if the application is agreed, the construction management plan. That is, a lot has been said about it, but it is vital. I have experience in another parish of a development, a management plan being agreed, and agreement that there would be consultation with the parish council on a regular basis, and it just didn't happen. And it is really, really important. That road, I use that road regularly. The congestion at the junction at the top is really bad, and it does need proper management and proper consultation all the way through. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of the ward member? Councillor Penny.
Yeah, perhaps I could have asked the parish council chairman, but you might know. Is the land ownership the same for the adjacent fields as it is for the current site?
Afraid I don't know.
Are you able to answer that question from the parish council? I mean, if you're able to answer it quickly, I'll let you come in.
That's kind of you. I can't answer it directly. I believe it to be in the ownership of Flagship, and I'm not aware that they've owned any additional land.
I am sort of... Sorry, I'm sort of assuming that it was part of the same farmland, and the farmer has sold the plot to Flagship. And that is all, the red line area is all that Flagship have got. That's what I'm assuming.
Thank you.
Any further questions of the ward member? Okay, thank you very much. So I will now open the item up for debate. Anybody like to make a start? Councillor Linda.
I think this is a very good development plan altogether, and I do like the fact that 100% of the abodes will be affordable in various shapes. So therefore, I would like to propose that we approve of this planning application with one condition, and that is the inclusion of a fence around this pond area, a fence around a height 80-90 centimeters, sufficient to prevent 3 to 4 year olds from entering the water unsighted, but also low enough to mitigate serious concerns about any aesthetic aspects. So that is what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. You've made a formal proposal, so I need a seconder. Is there anybody willing to second that proposal? And I'd just like to then go back to the planning officers. We haven't got a fence. Is that something that is even possible?
Sorry, Chair, I didn't know if you wanted a seconder first.
Hopefully one of you can comment on that.
No, that's fine. So we don't have a fence, but that can be included in the landscaping scheme, and there is no reason you can't choose to condition that. And we can add that there is the inclusion of a low fence around the attenuation basin. I think probably where we come from a planning point of view is when we call it a basin, when we call it a pond, actually it's dry the majority of the time. If you see some of the big sites at the moment, that they are dry despite the months of rain that we've had. So I think that's where we come from, is actually fence it it's dry and it is only wet a proportion of the year, but at the same time when it is wet, I appreciate that, but I don't see why we can't condition that if that's that particular concern that members would like to take forward.
And if I can just come back to you, Councillor Linda, did you mean one of those like little low wooden fences like you see around some attenuation basins? I know you specified as some sort of height, but you often get those little wooden fancy things.
We'd call that a knee rail chair.
A knee rail. Is that what you were referring to, or were you referring to something bigger than that?
A fence that will stop the 3 to 4 year olds who are obviously completely unaware of any dangers and not all that easy to sight either. Stop them from trotting into the water when there is water. That is what I would propose.
Okay, thank you. So do we have a seconder? Because until we have a seconder, we can't take it any further. Councillor Patchett?
So I would be happy to second, because obviously these attenuation ponds sit in a bowl, so you don't have to put a fence on the absolute outer edge. You can put a low-lying fence within the bowl, and the fence will actually potentially not be seen at ground level. And all the developments that I've seen recently that have got these attenuation ponds have got fencing around it, and because it's right next to the park, there is a chance that small children can wander into the pond. So yes, it's going to be empty a bulk of the time, but as soon as October hits, it's going to have water in, and sort of dogs running off and kids from the park. I think a fence is sensible, so happy to second.
Okay, so we now have a proposal which has been seconded. Does anybody else wish to make their views known? Thank you, Councillor Lawrence.
I'm disappointed that we've made a proposal which hasn't included the parish council being involved in the traffic management plan, and I think that's an omission, so I will not be supporting the current proposal. The point on the fence, yes and no. A fence only lasts so long. Who's going to maintain it again? So I'd rather greater concern be put on the support of the parish council and their concerns about the traffic management plan rather than fencing. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Penny?
I agree with Councillor Lawrence's comments. I think pond safety can also be maintained with the right sort of planting. There are I've seen plenty of ponds which are well planted that discourages small children from walking into ponds. You can achieve the same result. Perhaps if a fence is particularly wanted by the committee, then that could be obscured by planting.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Hardingham?
Yes, I'm really not very much in favour of fencing. I feel that open landscape is better and more easily maintained. And I think we need to accept that a certain level of, very low level of risk is a part of life. And children shouldn't be completely isolated from any risk all through their lives. So I mean, I've brought up children adjacent to a pond. I'm aware that there are risks, but I feel that it's acceptable. I've got another point I would like to make, if I may. In some of our discussions in this chamber, we focus quite a lot on the quality of the agricultural land which is going to be developed. And I note in this case that the site is Grade 2 land. And I'm disappointed really that that we should be taking Grade 2 land out of agricultural production. I realise it's not relevant to the outcome of this discussion, but nevertheless I feel that's something that we ought to be aware of in the future.
Thank you. Well, maybe I'll just say my views. I'm not in favour of a fence around the attenuation basin. I think I agree with Councillor Penny. There are other ways that you can make it a little bit more less accessible. And I also agree with Councillor Hardingham that I think that some parents need to take responsibility for having a 2- and 3-year-old running. I think there are more. Personally, I think the road is a bit more of a concern than an attenuation basin to a toddler. And there aren't any fences proposed along the road, so I'm not in favour of fences. And I do agree also with a bit about the agricultural land and about the traffic, but there is already an existing permission for outline development on this site. So I don't think that those are going to, you know, we've already got permission to put housing on this effectively. This is just, is this the right scheme? And I think the thing that I'm most disappointed about is the lack of landscaping on the eastern boundary. And although, okay, on our plan, the red line is just at the back of those gardens, and there is a hedge, a pretty low, insubstantial hedge, just outside our red line plot. And actually, I think I'd have preferred to see those gardens slightly reduced in size and had some landscaping along that edge. It is the gateway to Haughley if you're coming from Old Newton. It's a very exposed road, horrible to cycle along because the wind always gets you and it's up and down. But you do see the houses as you come over the crest of the hill, and I think that they need some softening. And I'm a bit concerned about just accepting the fact that there's going to be a few trees in people's back gardens. And okay, they might be protected for 10 years, but if someone chops it down, who's going to report it? It's in their back garden. Someone might not even spot it. So although I think this is a good development, I think it's great that we've got the sustainability measures in the build and the solar panels, the EV charging, the air source heat pumps, I think are fantastic. But there just doesn't seem to be quite enough information about the landscaping. It doesn't seem like we really know exactly what is going on about that. In a way, I'd like that to be resolved before we make a decision. This has got this little play area. It's right on the edge of the village. And is this new development going to be fully integrated with the rest of the village? Are you going to get, children going from this play area to another play area and integrating, or is this going to become a little bit of an enclave with its own little play area up the top end of the village? That's my concern. I don't think there's anything we can do about that, but I am concerned about the landscaping on the eastern edge, and I would like to see more done that is going to be secure for the future before I can support this application. But and as I said, I'm not in favour particularly of fencing. I wouldn't want to condition fencing around the attenuation basin. Maybe, as you say, it's part of the whole landscaping. I think I'm more in favour of going away and coming back with a full landscape plan as to what is actually going to happen, and then we can assess it in a better way. But we do currently have this proposal on the table, and if anyone else would like to speak, please raise your hand. Councillor Patchett.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously I did second the motion for fencing, but I believe perhaps a better word would be a barrier, some form of separation barrier. So be that hedging or a fence or a wall, I would like to see a barrier that separates children from being able to go into the pond. Most other developments have it. So yes, I said yes to fencing, but I would, if the word said barrier, would that sort of satisfy people? Take away fencing, add barrier.
Councillor Linda?
I agree. Let's use the word barrier instead, if that is more palatable, and it also gives people a bit more leeway as to how to actually implement the thing.
Councillor Warboys?
I listen to you. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think Flank 6 Homes are bringing forward a really good proposal here. I think there's an ambition to make these houses as energy efficient as possible, and I welcome the affordable housing. With respect to this, the attenuation pond, have we got a slide of the profile of the pond? Just have a look at the gradient, because there's attenuation ponds and attenuation ponds. There's one in Gislingham, which I think is 15 feet deep, which does have a barrier around it, and it's got a life ring as well. But at the best of time, there's only about 3 feet of water in the bottom. Not that that's not dangerous, but in a lower attenuation pond where you can most of the time run a lawnmower in and out of it, and it helps with maintenance.
There's one in Woolpit where they've got like an attenuation pond and swales, and they're all part of the public open space next to the play area. The play area is fenced, but the swales and the attenuation basins aren't.
So do we have a profile for the attenuation pond?
I don't know if you're able to find one of those whilst we listen to a couple of other people who had their hands up. Maybe the officers can find something. Councillor Elkin?
Thank you. I mean, I agree with Councillor Mansell. It sort of feels like it's a really good development and there's lots of really brilliant things there, but the landscaping doesn't feel like it's quite detailed enough, and it seems a shame when so much of it's really good and it's going to be there for a long time not to have all that detail. With the pond, I'm kind of in two minds. I've got, my kids are teenagers now, but I've brought up kids. We have a pond in our garden which we didn't fence, but I also know it takes, you know, taking your eyes off a small child for a couple of minutes and a very small amount of water for bad things to happen. So I personally don't feel like I know enough about it. There must be experts in whether these things should be fenced or shouldn't be fenced next to a play area. Maybe fencing the play area is the way forward. My understanding of these sorts of play spaces in a development is that they are intended to be accessible to slightly older children, perhaps without the mum or dad having to go out. You know, you open the back door, kids can run out if they're sort of 6, 7. So there may be sort of younger, unsupervised children in that space. And it does only take a few minutes for kids to get into deep water, and suds basins, you know, again, it'd be interesting to know what the winter depth is, or the autumn, when it is full of water. So I just don't feel like I know enough about that, and I would...
Do we even know if the play area is fenced or proposed to be fenced? Sorry, I'm asking you another question when you're doing something else. That's multitasking. Okay, I'll ask Councillor Lawrence for his comments.
I think we're getting bogged down with fencing, personally. I live in Needham Market. We've got a huge lake that's owned by Mid Suffolk Council, and there's very little fencing around that lake. So I think we're going over the top, beyond what's required. And I come back to the conditions that we're being asked to approve here. And one of them, the third one down, is one of the conditions is detailed landscaping scheme implementation and aftercare. That's what we're being asked in those recommendations. So I don't necessarily say we need all that detail here now. It's going to come. Unless that's my... and I still come back to the current proposals that we've got and seconded does not have any regard for the parish council's main concern, which is a traffic management plan, their involvement in that process. So I will still not be supporting the current proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. Have we got any more details about the attenuation pond profile?
I don't think we've spotted the attenuation pond profile. We'll keep having a little look. There is on the landscape master plan which has a gate on the play area, so one would assume that comes with a fence, but it's not absolutely 100%, but it does show a gate on either side of the play area, so that does look like the play area itself is fenced. So as you say, if you look away for a second and find your child not to where you last saw them, there is that restriction. And I think, you know, we could definitely look at some wording that the landscaping scheme includes a barrier to the attenuation basin to limit access, so that we can have a look at what the options might do. As various councillors have suggested, actually some landscaping can be as efficient as a fence. I mean, when we talk knee rail, actually you can go under and over them without batting an eyelid, but actually a hedge or other landscape feature might offer a greater resilience and other benefits. So I think if you're happy, we'll take that away and look at that. I think that would be worthwhile doing, and part of our landscaping condition would do that. And similarly, as Councillor Lawrence has rightly said, that detail of the landscaping scheme is saved for later. It is part of the condition. It is something that we will literally cover. You know, your wildflower planting density, how many trees you're planting, what age are they planted, what maintenance is there, how are you going to maintain that to the point of how many times a year you're going to mow it. So that will all come out through to a really fine level of detail, if that's any reassurance. But I appreciate it's not on the plan for you today as such, but hopefully that helps.
And I think my concern was that eastern boundary, and there isn't any space to put any landscaping there. That's why, in a way, I'm not happy with that. I think the landscaping around the attenuation basin and the play area can be resolved, but not about that eastern boundary. Was there something you wanted to come back on, Alex? Oh,
No, I'm just trying to find a cross-section of the basin, as Councillor Alboys has requested. I don't recall seeing one, to be honest, Chair. I mean, we do have a levels plan, but that is looking down on top of it only. So that's the best we can do, I'm afraid. But it would be stepped three sections. Yes, you would have.
Is it worth putting the landscape plan up again?
Yeah,
we steps on it.
We can try
Is
and
that right, Mandy?
get the best from that one. There we go.
Sorry, you've got to have a bit extra sensory vision on that one, I think, but you can just see the slightly different shades of green, and the levels through it are supposed to be sort of topographical, that it is a very gradual change in height difference. But as I say, I don't think we've got a cross-section of that, but it would.
It is one that is designed to be dry for the majority of the time, and only, do we get a sort of, 1 in 100-year flood, it'll have water, or do they specify things like that?
There's a lot of detail in the flood risks assessment and surface water drainage strategy. Yes, basically it would be dry unless we have a lot of rain, put simply. Yeah.
They talk about 1 in 100-year floods, and we have them every 10 years or something, but that is a sort of specification. And I just wondered whether we knew if it was, if it's been specified to only have water in it, 1 in 100-year floods, and we can expect it every 20 years or something. We still have a slightly amended proposal about some sort of barrier for the attenuation basin, and it has been seconded, and there has been some talk about including additional wording to the construction management plan condition to include consultation with the parish council, or whether we need to set up a parish liaison group. I don't know whether the proposer and seconder are willing to include that or not. Or whether there's even anything we can do on that. That can be a condition added to that construction management
plan.
I
think we've got the construction management bullet. The question is whether the proposer and seconder would be happy to add. My suggestion would be literally that the construction management plan condition would include liaison with the parish council, so that how that came about and what form that took would be agreed to us. But again, up to proposer and seconder.
And what do the proposer and seconder feel about adding that condition to the current proposal?
So in terms of the barrier, what I was suggesting was that the landscaping scheme to include a barrier to attenuation basin to limit access, so that would give us flexibility to look at whether that's an ERAL, whether that's planting.
Yeah, that is fine, as long as we have this in wording, that it was something will be done.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the second point was whether you're happy if the construction management plan condition that we're currently proposing, if we can add to that includes liaison with the parish council, if you're happy with that.
Yeah.
And the seconder? Right, Councillor Hardingham, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'm very much with Councillor Lawrence on this. I feel we are getting seriously bogged down over this attenuation pond issue. It is most of the time going to be absolutely dry or a puddle. And I'm reluctant to set a precedent, really, because we're going to have more and more of these suds basins coming up in the future, and I think we don't want to overmanage them, really. I don't think we ought to be setting that as a benchmark for ourselves by putting fencing around or even planting a formal hedge of some description.
Thank you. Councillor Warboys, was your hand up? And then we've got Councillor...
I just had a reread of the Suffolk Place Services document, and it does, following on from your comments about the eastern edge of the site, it does say that it's not has a sufficient landscape buffer to screen the development from this viewpoint and create a characterful approach to the village. So I think that must be resolved before we can approve it, we're losing the agricultural land. It is an open space. So I think we need to sort of at least make sure that gateway to the village is as good as possible. It does also go on and mention that the attenuation pond will have 500 millimetre of permanent standing water. So I don't know how they've arrived at that, but...
So it does permanently have some water in it then?
Yeah, 500.
Right, okay.
Well.
Councillor Penny, you're going to come back?
Yeah, I was going to agree with what Councillor Warboys has just said and your comments concerning the eastern boundary. It's a shame the landowner, or the former landowner of the site and the current landowner of the neighbouring field we can't encourage them to take more responsibility, and then there would be no danger of people having to have smaller gardens. But as the plan stands, I do share those concerns in response to both your comments and those of the Parish Council.
Thank you. Councillor Lawrence?
It's part question, part comment. It's already got outline planning permission for this site. I'm just wondering whether that landscaping issues was discussed and of such concern at that outline. Possibly not, because this is the detail. But I think we're being a bit presumptuous that this is the last of the eastern bound development of the village. There's all very well putting full landscaping down that site to block this development, but what's going to block the next one?
Well, it is on the settlement boundary, goes along that edge. Although we do have the outline, I suspect the outline didn't go into detail about landscaping. I suspect that would have been a reserved matter. And the difference with this thing is we're not looking at reserved matters. This is a full application, which is completely different from the outline. So although it's relevant in terms of the fact that there's the principle of development of housing on that site, I don't think we can take much more from it. And yes, in the long term, they may well build beyond it, but there's still no harm in a line of trees, is my view. But anyway, Councillor Patchett.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I'm not sure if members have had a look at all of the documents in the planning application, but there is one called a boundary treatment plan, which does sort of say what will be on that eastern edge. So it does say that there will be a fence, and it tells you the height of the fence. So
I wasn't talking about a fence. I was talking about soft landscaping to soften a hard fence is a development. It doesn't look like trees, does it? But that's just my view. So if no one else has got any further comments to make, we do have a proposal which has been seconded, and if the planning officer can just read out the changes to any conditions that are written in our papers before we go to a vote.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So we're looking at approval as recommendation on pages 34 to 35, and then we've got additional conditions. So landscaping scheme to include barrier to attenuation basin to limit access, the construction management plan condition to include liaison with the Parish Council, and to just pick up on the couple that Alex referenced at the beginning of the meeting, that the dwellings are to be M42 compliant, and that we're looking to secure the implementation of those sustainability measures that have been proposed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so I will ask the Governance Officer to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Thank you, members. Chair, that makes 6 votes for and 2 against. So that's carried.
Okay, thank you very much. We finally get to item number 8, a site inspection. Are there any site inspection requests to consider?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. So the next meeting of Mid Suffolk Planning Committee will be on Wednesday the 28th of August at 9:30 a.m. in the King Edmund Chamber. And I'd like to close this meeting now at 11:52. Thank you.